Hello mga Kakasyo Nation, I'm Engineer JD, and today we will discuss how to do the cross product of vectors in vector mode using Casio FX 991ME 2nd edition. Let's get started. In this example, we are to calculate the moment of the force AB given by this angle bracket notation 300, 200, 600 kilonewtons about the point O. If the moment arm from point O to point A is equal to the vector -3, 5, and -4 meters. So we are to use the formula for the moment, which is common in classical mechanics. So the formula for the moment about point O is the cross product of the radius vector R, or the moment arm, times the force AB, so R cross F, as we all know. First, let's enter the vector mode because the given values are vectors, and we know that vectors have components like this one and has magnitude and direction. So we all need those to be able to calculate this problem. So first, let's enter the vector mode by pressing mode 3 times. So 1, 2, 3. So we pressed mode 3 times and then we press 3 for the vector mode. Now we are inside the vector mode. Now first, let's input the vectors. So starting with the radius vector OA, so given by this component, we enter this command. So first, we access the options for vector mode using shift and then 5. So take note of the vector VCT written above the key 5. So that's how we access the vector mode. Next, we press dim. That's option 1 here to create the vector. So dim 1. And then we select what vector we are to create. So there are 3 vectors here represented by vectors A, B, and C. And we are to create first vector A. So let's press 1 for the vector A. Next, the calculator will ask us what is the dimension of this vector. So is it a 2-dimensional vector or a 3-dimensional vector? Now, for the moment arm ROA, so there are 3 numbers inside the angle brackets. So this is a 3-dimensional vector. So we are to press 3 to represent 3-dimensional vector. And then we press equals. Now, after that, once we enter the size, we can now input the components of the vectors. First is vector A1 representing the x component of that vector. So in this given, we will input -3 for the x component. So -3, -3, and then equal. Next, by pressing equals, we are to proceed to the next vector component, which is vector A2 representing the y component. So in this case, it's 5. So let's input 5 and then equals. And then we have the third component or the z component, which is vector A3. So in this case, it's -4. So let's input -4 and then equals. So once we press equals, the screen now goes back to vector A1, which you can press the up and down keys or the equal keys to recall the values of A1, A2, and A3. Now, once it's done, you are done reviewing the values and you know it's correct, then you can now go to the next vector, which is the force AB. So these are the components. Let us press AC first to clear the screen, and then let's now use variable B for this vector. So again, let's press shift 5 to enter the vector options, and then 1 dim to create a new vector, and then option 2 to create the vector variable B. Press 2, and then again we are being asked for the dimension of that vector. So let's input 3 for 3-dimensional vector, and then press equals, and then we can now input the components. So starting with B1, so that's the usual process. We have 300 for the x component. Let's input 300 and then press equals. Next, we will input the second component, which is 200. So let's input 200 and then again equals. And then for the third component, z, let's input 600. So 600 equals. Now let's review if the inputs are correct. So V1 is 300, pressing equals shows B2, and then pressing equals shows B3. So which is correct. We are now done inputting the vectors. Now we can now calculate the cross product of the two vectors R and F. So that's the formula, R cross F. Now, to input the cross product, it's straightforward. So all we need to do is to access those vectors to be able to use them in the calculator. So let's press AC first to clear the screen, and then let's access the vectors A and B from the calculator. So Shift 5 again, and then 3. So in this case, 3 allows us to access the vector variables. So let's press 3. And then there are 4 variables here, so A, B, and C. So A and B are already created, and C is blank. We don't need C. And then the ans variable here is the vector answer. So this is where the calculator will store vector result in the answer key. So first, let's access vector A. So let's press 1. So it appears on the screen, vector A. Then for the cross product, let's press times. So it's the usual times key for the cross product. And then let's access vector B. So Shift 5, and then vector, which is 3, and then 2, which is vector B. So here's the input, vector A times vector B. We can now press equals. Now in this case, it's not the usual in the 991ES or the 570ES. Instead, in the 991MS, vector results are shown per component. So first, it will show the component or the first component of the answer. So in this case, it's 3,800. Pressing equals will show you nothing, of course. So in this case, you will press the right key. In this case, so pressing the right key will show us the Y component, which is 600. And then pressing again the right key will show us the third component, which is negative 2,100. And taking this all together, the answers, we will have now the final result for the moment, which is 3,800, 600, and negative 2,100 Newton or kilonewton meters. And sir, is this correct? Let us verify manually. So in this case, we can calculate the cross product of two vectors using either the method of minors or the method of Sarus. So in this manual verification, I've used the method of Sarus. In this case, we have arrived at the same answer, which is 3,800 I hat plus 600 J hat minus 2,100 K hat kilonewton meters. That is how you do cross product of vectors using Casio FX 991MS 2nd edition. And that's it for today, mga Ka-Casio Nation, and see you on the next video.